Today, I'm going to focus on beautiful vocal production in young singers. This is a very short session, so I'm going to jump right in. I've provided a handout that has a lot of information, so more than I can possibly cover. Hopefully, you will have ideas that you can put in practice tomorrow, and hopefully there will be some ideas for long-term growth, which I know that we're all interested in doing. So let's look at ranges and tessitura of young voices because it starts with the repertoire. So you'll see this on the screen right there. Keep in mind that these are averages. Some children will have less range, some will have more. But if you use these ranges for a guide as for choosing repertoire, remembering that you don't want to stay in the highest and the lowest for long times. So tessitura, where most of the notes lie, we certainly don't want to include the extremes. For example, I can still sing a high C, but it's not a place I want to live. And for many young singers, if you stay in the very top of their range for a long time, they get what I call fallout, where it sounds as if they can't match pitch. They can, they just can't sustain that pitch matching for a long time in the top of their range. So now we'll go to also middle C for young voices can be challenging. I know there are things I covered today that many of you already know. My philosophy is if you get one good new idea in a workshop, it's worth it. If you get two, it's fantastic. If you get three, your clinician probably didn't get paid enough. So hopefully you'll get at least one good idea that you don't know, and there will be a nice review of things you already do. So we'll look at the slide now for the general range and tessitura. These are for what we call the tenor bass voices in middle school. So it begins with the repertoire, and in the slides and in your handout, I've listed suggestions to vary the repertoire. Music from the USA, folk music from the USA, music from around the world, music from a variety of composers, composed of the old masters, contemporary composed, music from our time and place. So if you have a local composer, fantastic. As you program, if each program could have a variety of music and a way to allow the program to flow, whether it's by telling a story, having a theme, or just highlighting various styles in a very well-planned order that takes the audience on a little bit of a journey through that. So now we'll go to slide 5. Today's focus is going to be on vocal pedagogy. So we want to constantly teach how to use the voice, not just in warm-ups. Often people will do a lot of vocal ped and warm-up, but then during the songs, they do whatever. So we need to attend to the voice in every rehearsal, and it can be an easy, quick way to do that. Sing for them, not with them. Studies have shown that even if you are mouthing the words, you simply don't hear. But certainly if you are singing, which is so tempting to do sometimes, you can't hear what is coming at you to make an assessment of what is needed to help them. So, in short, if you're thinking about ideas for rehearsal, you want to think, what do you hear? First, sorry, I made that wrong. What do you want to hear? First, how do you want this to sound? What do you hear? What are you going to do about it? So that's always my philosophy for rehearsals. And then we're going to try to teach the voice with the future so that you are teaching good habits rather than bad habits, which sound okay for the moment, but then some voice teacher down the road is going to have to undo. And I found in teaching from very young students all the way through adult professionals, I use the same technique. It just varies how it is presented and at what depth at the various ages. But the breathing really doesn't change. The breathing is the breathing. It just is for different ages. We also, in the rehearsal, remember children live in a world of color and sound and movement. And so if we can keep them engaged with those sorts of things. So slide 6, we are going to do a little vocal exploration. I think this can be used for any age. We did some vocal exploration with my college students, and it was very freeing. In fact, there's a little experiment we did once where after we did free improvisatory vocal exploration, they sang this phrase in their piece, and it was so much better just because it freed the body and the mind and their expressive nature. So starting just with vocal variation, so I might say, "Hi, how are you today? I'm a little mouse." "Well, I'm not. I'm a really big frog." "Ooh, ooh, ooh, oh." And one of my former students who teaches elementary and has for about 15 years says she notices a trend with her students that there is less vocal variation. So this might be more important than ever. Then sirens. I even do those with the college age. It's just a way to get the voice going. So again, I like to combine it with movement, and I don't think you can see my whole body. So I'm going to switch that just a little bit. And if you go, "Ooh," so do that with me if you will. I can't really see you, but I think I'm gonna know. And I think you'll get more out of it if you try to do this with me. So oftentimes when people are doing sirens, I hear what I call the primal scream. "Woo!" And the teacher says, "Good," and they move on. But no, it's not good. So we want to think as we go up to think lift, lighten, and more narrow. So sometimes I'll do this motion where we sort of go into this narrow over. So, "Ooh." And the other thing is, how do we round our lips? It's not ew, but ooh, ooh. And I was going to go over this later, but there's two things for the ooh. We need to have space behind the mouth, ooh, in the top of the mouth, and the lips need to be round. This is the only real shtick I do. Think of an elf, right? So that helps that sense of lifting behind and lips round. So, ooh, if I have space behind, but I don't round my lips, ooh, it's not the same. If I round my lips with no space behind, ooh, it's not the same. It doesn't resonate. But if I do both, ooh, so we spend a lot of time on the sirens. And then there are stories. Some I didn't bring all my props to New Mexico with me. Sorry about that. But I'm on a family visit. So Singer Green lives on this hill, and there's a big valley below, and up here, Singer Red. Singer Green is going to go see Singer Red. Just make the sound with me as she goes down. Ooh, hi, Mr. Red. Hi, Miss Green. Let's go to my house. Okay, Singer Green, here we go. Ooh, so silly things like that and just wearing the different color gloves makes it fun. I have a little prop. It's a little cone, and there's a little dowel rod at the bottom, and there's extra fabric. So when you push up on that, a little clown face comes up. I know clowns scare some people, so you can make it another face. But sometimes I've done this. So let's make the clown go up. So your voices have to go higher. Ooh. Now follow me. Ooh. So a lot of things with that. And then size. Oh, imitations of animals. I had to learn to do a monkey recently. So all kinds. I had to learn the dolphin too. I can't remember that one. And then simple echo. Ew, ew. And sometimes I do this in a 4-beat. So I might go boop, boop, a dop, bop, beep, beep, boop. Now you imitate that. Boop, boop, a dop, bop, beep, beep, boop. We're also getting a sense of beat. And then later we can work that into improvisation. So I might go boop, boop, beep, beep, boop. And then you'll go back. You'll start with what I did if you want to do a really good imitation, or it could be totally different. Boop, boop, bop, bop, little bop. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be singing. Anything like that. So we'll now go to the next slide. And we're going to do just a few warm-ups. And I'm going to be checking the time because I really want to get through this. And I'm already just a wee bit behind, but we'll be okay. So I usually start with reviewing posture. And I do this with young singers for a long time at every rehearsal because, as you know, good posture is hard to make a habit. So we start with our feet shoulder width apart, not one in front of the other, but evenly there. You can't see my feet, but they're even. And then knees, we do some bending. I say pretend you're riding a horse or a hog, right? And we're just bending our knees a little bit. And then we just keep them nice and relaxed. Not bent, but nice and relaxed. Hips straight rather than the sideways thing. And then our chest will be high. And one way we can do that is as the chest is high, we want the shoulders just relaxed and down. We can bring hands up, bring them down, and keep the chest there. We can also roll shoulders forward, roll shoulders back, keep them in the center. And then the head level. A lot of children will sing like this, or if they're looking at music like this. So then going on to the breath. So putting hands here, I've got a little triangle in my epigastric area. I don't know if you can see that. Um, and so I'm going to sip as if I'm sipping through a straw. And I'm going to do that before each note. So I'm just going to start. Ah, 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 ah. We don't really need a breath between each one, but let's do one to practice that breathing. So do it with me and see if you feel the expansion here as you sing each piece and or each note. Ah, 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 etc. Sometimes I'll ask them, did you start the sound here or here? They know. Ah, right? That's not. Ah, ah. And if we can just get this moving correctly, but listen and watch, because if you're just running through vocal warm-ups, they really might be doing more harm than good. So listen and make some adjustments. Now, the next one, I will do the same thing, but on an oo vowel. Oftentimes on descending scales, they won't be in tune. So this helps. They'll push it a little flat because they start thinking of the next note before they get to it. So again, if you wanted to take it to the next level and you had maybe a smaller class or you could do a few at a time, you have a big space, they could actually step. So that works very well. And then we can also do this. We're going to take a breath, allow yourself to expand. Notice I've got breathing space under my arms. So if I see them doing this, I'll say, oh, no, we want that breathing space because this looks like you're tied up and it doesn't really help. So watch for what they're doing and listen to the vowel. E, e, ni, ah. Sorry, I just used those two. E, ah. E, 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 not the beauty pageant E, but E, E, ah. And the ah has also there is space in the back. And yes, the tongue goes down for the ah, but the roof of the mouth doesn't. So ni ah. I'm gonna move on. Um, we might do uh, ni, ne, na, no, nu, and let them release, but release up rather than ni, ne, na, no, nu, right? Nu. and let them release up with you. Ni, ne, na. That one's good because it has them sustain the same pitch over two notes. I need to run over, and this is really frustrating because I can't hear you. I don't know, but I'm trusting you're with me. I think a couple of you are sitting down just listening, so you might want to go with us. All right. So, but ask questions, and you might ask them, "What did you think about that?" Ooh, if we can constantly have the singers assess. Excuse me. Um, so in a situation, I would stop a lot, comment on what they're doing, but get them right back into the singing. Give them something quick and easy to change. Say, oh, 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 get them right back in it. So now we'll move to slide 8. And this is sometimes we want to address specific problems. So if I notice, for example, they have a leap up to a note, from the day before. I might do it in the moment. Just stop the music and say, let's try this. Let's gonna sing. Nia. So we're gonna lift and lighten a Nia, Nia. So let them bounce and now go to sustain. Nia, Nia. Softer. Nia. So as many ways as possible. And then for the next day, then I would put that exercise into the warm up. And that helps a lot. Sometimes if I'm starting a piece in a foreign language, then I will start warming up on the vowels or consonants that we don't have. So German, ah, that sort of thing. Get them used to that. Consonant contamination, we're going to discuss later. So let's go to slide 9. This is going to be very brief. You have seen a little bit of movement. I will do a little bit more as we go through. And so now let's go to Calico Cat, to the, the music. And this is a piece by Andy Beck. There is a link to this in your music. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to look at it. When you first look at, and the way to get good rehearsal techniques is to really prepare the score so that you are free from being tied to it. You know how it's put together, so that leads you to know the best way to teach it. I don't teach every piece the same. Some pieces I might just read through, even with my youngest group. Some I teach completely by rote. Others, I'll do the beginning and the end because they happen to be the same, but I want to be aware of these things. So let's look at this. And excuse me, I have a little morning in here. Um, so, you can't see the whole piece, but I will tell you it begins in F major, as you can probably see, and it stays there until it moves to G in measure 75, and it stays in G until the end. But if you look, you can see that there is a 12 measure intro. Once you know that, and it's sort of staccato as opposed to measure 13 when the voices come in, where Andy has written longer notes, and so there's more of a sense of phrase. So now you know if you're conducting this, and we would do it in 2. I'm not going to do it exact tempo for teaching purposes, but we would do it in 2. You don't even have to look at the music. You look at the children, smile at them, show deep breaths. We know by knowing the form, we don't need to stare at the music. So at the beginning, dee dee da dee dee da dee dee da dee. Sorry. Da da dee da dee da dee da dee da bum bum da 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 da. Watch my hands now. And so that prep, then I do in a legato. I do that in the way that I want them to come in. So you've got the last 2 measures before they come in, oompa, oompa, bum, ba, ba, dee, da, da. So now at letter A, we have, sorry, we have two four-measure phrases. I'm going to call that A. And then at measure 21 on the second page, there is a repeat of that. The only difference is there's a staccato in the last note that you don't see, and the words are different. So that's just going to be our A section. And then we're going to pull up pages 4 and 5. We're just doing an overview. What is it like? So now there's a section of echo and some parts. So the first two measure a direct echo. She's a calico cat, she's a calico cat. Then we've got two measures of 3 parts. Notice the middle part is optional. Beautiful. If you've got some advanced students that can do that, or your group is ready, great. If you don't, the piece works fine without it. And then we've got a repeat of that. She's a calico cat, she's a calico cat. And then we've got the 3 parts. The only difference is now, instead of part 1 going, she's like, how about that? We've got, how about that, down the octave, and part 2. So that's the difference. Now we know that. Then we've got 4 measures. And then and I call that, by the way, the B part. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It just, it knows that you know what it is. The interlude of 4 measures. And then we have an 8 measures. This is derived from the material that we've had before, but it has a different rhythm. So it's calico cat, wait, wait, calico cat, wait, wait, calico cat, wait, wait, calico cat. So we've got that section. And then pages 6 and 7. I love this because now we have the ostinato combined with the melody. And notice at 49, the sopranos get the melody, or the part 1 gets the melody, part 2 gets the ostinato. And then at measure 57, it's switched. So everybody gets the melody, just loving that. So for the sake of time, I'm going to stop here. But I've gone through the whole how the piece is put together on your handout. Now, the next steps. What are the challenges in the music? So we are going to look at the harmony part now on page 4. And we're going to look at that lower part. At the beginning of the piece, we've got mostly mi, sol, mi, re, do. They're very simple. Here, we've got she's a calico cat, right? So how do we get them? If that's new material, if they don't know that do to la, how do we get there? Do, do, sol, do, sol, la, ti, do, sol, la, do, la. And we just keep playing with that until we get that and repeat it. And that would be one way to do it. You could do it on levels and just, she's a calico cat. She's a calico cat. We can just repeat that. And then we're going to now go to pages 2 and 3. So one of the challenges is singing. Once you set up that staccato, now when the voices come in, they are to sing differently. So let's sing that together. And we will, since you're advanced, we're going to do it on text. So, black as the midnight and white as the snow. So that. Now let's draw a line as if we're going to paint, but we don't want any brush marks in the paint. So it has to be very smooth. Black as the snow. And then you can come back this way. There are lots of ways you can do that. Black as the midnight and white as the snow. You can add color to it. Get some scarves that have a little bit of stretch. Let them have a partner. Black as the midnight as I'm pulling the scarf, or just simply swing my scarf around. There are lots of ways to do this, but making sure they understand that difference in articulation. And then at page measure 25, we have a diphthong. Oh, how. So how is made of two sounds, ah and oo. So how, right? So having them just sing that. How I, how I. The diction books say ha oo, but I find with groups ha oo goes better. So now I've listed more. These are just a very few of the challenges, but going through and saying, how are they going to be challenged by this? And how can I meet the challenges of the music? So then your rehearsal just simply becomes a series of challenges to be met. So how might we do this? So we want to get the singers to experience some sort of whole. Doreen Rao called it produce, practice, perform. So we produce the music in some way. The whole thing? No, but some sense of a whole. So I could start by singing the mi, so, mi, re, do, re, mi, so, mi, re. Mi, so, mi, re, do, re, mi, re, re, do. And then I won't say, no, I'm going to sing the next part. Is it the same or different? So I would do that. So engage in the students. Now let's try to have you sing it. Mi, so, mi, re, do, re, mi, so, mi, re. Or I could just start it with me showing them the hand signs and letting them sing it. Lots of ways, but we basically are going to get that first 16 measures on the first day. If they, in singing back, miss notes, then we'll go back and deal with that in some way. What if they sing, mi, so, mi, but they sing, black as the midnight, the midnight, the midnight. So we listen, we assess, we help them figure out where the mistake is, and then we we do that. And I always say to my students, what happens if you miss a note? Nothing. We fix it. So wrong notes are not something to feel bad about. It's just something that we deal with. We all sing wrong notes. I sing wrong notes. You probably sing a few. If you don't, bless you. You're the lucky one. So then there are that might be one way. And then we might do the whole thing on rote. And then if they are ready, have them holding the octavo, which is another thing we have to teach. Luckily, this one has no parts that pull out. Love those. And say, do you see that? We also could have that first part printed up on a board at the front and say, does anybody see the melody we just sang? And go through it. I find when my singers are first learning to read, it helps to have something in common that we're all looking at so I can know exactly what they're seeing. So let's move on to Firefly because my time is short here. And let's look at pages 4 and 5. No, I lied. The first page. Thank you, Felicia. You were smarter than I was. So the challenge here is it's a minor key. So do you solfege with on do based minor or la based? I personally like la based. I think it is always more in tune. And I also know that my singers had to learn less new syllables. Sometimes if there's a very, very, very strong sol do pull, I might do it in do based. I look at it to decide if there aren't a lot of the new syllables, but generally I would do la based. And even though it's a little awkward at the beginning of this. So that's the first challenge with this piece. Now we'll look at pages 4 and 5. And there's a rhythm that might be challenging. It's not all equal notes. So at this point, let's look at measure 17. And I'm going to have you set up and them set up, and they can do this sitting down. So we're going to tap the 8th note. So I'm going to be a little not quite in tempo, but if we're going like this. Why are you hiding in the light of the day, only igniting when the sun goes up. Oh, look at this. If it's coming in off the beat, it's here. Y-R, Y-R. Now the rest are equal. Hiding in the. I find this a really good way to know on or off beat. It really is so helpful. Why are you hiding in the light of the day? Light of, and you see that the offbeat's not in a clap at all. But I think that's doesn't give them quite the same kinesthetic feel. And so there are also lots of diphthongs and triphthongs. I'm going to tell you the one. Fa, ia. 3 sounds in that. It's called a triphthong. There was a rock song they sang, fire. I love that because it's exactly how you pronounce it. In this case, I would sing fire, yeah, firefly, firefly. And that would be that. Now, very quickly, and Felicia, you can tell me, I think I've got just a couple more minutes before we go to questions. We are going to switch to the moon. Um, while we're doing that, I'm going to say just a word about the consonant contaminators, M, N, L, R, and N. If they are at the end of the word, they tend to suck the vowel for them. So if I'm singing shining, or what's that the word? Yes, shining. It might go shining. So I might put another consonant there. Be careful which one you choose. I have occasionally almost said a bad word, but I might sing shipe, shipe teak, shipe teak, shipe teak, teak, and then I'm going to pretend that I'm going to say another vowel, but then I'm going to fool my brain and at the last minute say shine. Shining. I hope you got that. I would know more if we were in person. Okay, the moon. Love this piece. So beautiful. Most of the challenges are vocal, and I hope I'm up to it this morning. Um, I didn't know I was going to be this way, but the first is that leap up, first getting it in tune. So, oh, moo. So first of all, getting that beautiful ooh, you might change to omuk because the N again is pulling it. Omuk. It's much easier than thinking that N. So if we can think that a little more. The next thing is in sustaining moon. So some ways to do that. Just having them pulse the subdivision, then dividing the room in half. You guys are going to sing the subdivision. And you're going to sustain. And then I'll have them listen. Did they sound like they were the same pitch? Invariably, the sustain is lower. So now give the energy and let's try it and try to match. And then we eventually move to all singing the sustain with the sense of then up from bottom, oh, moo, and just that sense of lifting. And then the are you listening? A little hint. Put the S of listening on the second note. So it's listening. Are you listening? We'll make it more beautiful. And I am going to stop there in, in case you have questions. Felicia, are there questions that have come up?
Yeah, we do have, well, one comment that I think could be read as a question. It says that
Okay.
it says, I find that my singers need more and more help finding and using their head voices.
Yes, and that's where the vocal exploration is so helpful. But the other thing is the range, because if the piece starts and it's sitting around middle C or where they have to pull out of that lower, and also then it's harder. I find that I had this a lot with when I was coaching musical theater students, when I was in grad school, I did a lot of musical theater. And I would have, when they wanted to switch into head, they had a hard time. So everything I began from the top down. So descending for warm-ups is going to help, and then gradually working into the ascending. But with young voices, I tend to do mostly, you notice most of what I did were descending, starting from the top of the range going down, because then you've got more of a chance. So I hope that's helpful. Maybe you already know all of that, but yeah, you're right. It is very, very difficult because um, I think the countertenor thing is helping a lot. I think they hear that. So yeah.
And then
Any
another,
others?
yeah, one more. Have you noticed students' voices changing earlier than they once did? I have genuine basses in late fifth grade.
Um, I'll be honest with you, I question that. No, I haven't. Yes, some voices do change earlier. Um, I often will have people tell me that they have a genuine bass, and then I go in and work with the child. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's not true. It can happen. I'm sure it can happen. But I would really work with them. I had one who was his mother was convinced his child's voice had changed. Turns out the kid had allergies, and so had the most beautiful soprano voice you've ever wanted to hear. Um, a lot of it is they just decide they don't want to sing high. So many of the cases that are often mistaken for changing or changed, they just don't want to. And so just encouraging them. But I do think that some occasionally you'll have a younger child. The studies, as far as I know, the most recent studies, I did my dissertation on the changing voice. So this has been a lifelong study, but there are some who do change early. Again, the averages, they're just averages. At this point, I still, when I go into schools, I find that in the eighth grade is where the majority of them do the very serious change. But if you've got one that's lower and they just at that point can't sing, I've done things like make up an ostinato for them to sing, or have them sing something an octave lower. That's tricky because then others want to do that as well, the ones who genuinely shouldn't be singing down there. But a lot of times if it's a growly sort of push down sound, I would just do a lot of vocal exploration to be sure. And if you are convinced that that really is a voice that is changing early, but then we have to accommodate for that clearly. But honestly, from what I've seen of the most recent research, there might be a little bit, but it's been pretty steady. And I still do a lot of middle school festivals, and the ranges that I give, I've had a lot of the teachers say, this works. And this is the first time we have ever heard the tenors or the baritones, and it's because I gave them a part they could actually sing. And a lot of times things are out of their ranges. So I feel free though. I would love if you would contact me on my email. I'd love to explore that with you, because if you truly have a bass, I would love to hear that recording. And I'm happy to be contacted online. So yeah, but I don't, as a big trend, I think that for the most part, um, maybe there's a little bit of a shift, but I'm finding it that it's holding pretty steady, and it's something that I do consider and talk with a lot of middle school teachers and go into a lot of middle schools just so that I can hear and make sure that what I'm saying is actually bearing true.
So then as a follow-up, what do you do to help fifth or sixth grade boys who have unchanged voices feel comfortable still singing soprano or alto?
We just make it matter of fact. And if I've got them, if like if you're talking about like if there's an SATB situation, if the child is a little more uncomfortable, and I would put that person, for example, if it were an SATB situation and that were still an unchanged voice, I would try to figure out a way where that person could stand next to the other, uh, next to the people that they relate to, if that makes any sense, so that they're not standing way over here and everybody else that they relate to or think are like them or on the other side of the room. And then just uh, luckily, there's usually one person who doesn't give a rip what anybody thinks. It's like, I sing high and everybody calls me, and I won't say words, but but I don't care. I love singing high. So if you've got a few that really like it, then that becomes a good thing. I think um, featuring them if they want to be featured, uh, but I think just talking about voice change and matter of fact that sometimes voices that stay highest the longest become, you know, low basses. And I mean, you can do lots of things, but I think we just have to um, uh, teach voice change as this is what happens. People's voices, some voices stay high a lot longer, others don't, and it's just a natural part of growing up. But yeah, and I know some people, they take it hard, and so I think we just have to do all that we can do to support. But I think how you position them on the risers, I think is really important there.
All right, one final question and then we have to wrap. But for this last one, for the younger end of students, especially third through fifth grade boys, how do you help them get out of the talk singing and into their head voice?
Oh, again, vocal exploration. One of the ones I didn't do is, I used to do with find a piece where a pop song where the voice goes really high, or I used to do the "wee," have them just make it unsinging, a lot of unsinging, and then just working with them on breathing, on making lines. So you might start with the chant and chant everything in a very high voice, and just that's the way we chant. That's a very quick answer, but again, if you want to follow up, I'm more than happy to do that. I get questions every week from somebody somewhere, and I'm happy to answer those as they come through. So just remember, engage, 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 let them express, compliment, lower your threshold of thrill on some days. We have to get excited on things that aren't that great, but oh my gosh, it's so much better than yesterday. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. And thank you so much, Felicia, for your help.